Yo, John, what's up, my brother?
How we doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing?
Doing great.
You know where you at?
Clear your house.
You are welcome to Ain't No
Ain't No
Days
Days
Off
Off.
podcast.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
New Year been good to you?
Oh yeah.
Man, that's real good, man. So you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Man, first of all, I want to say I invited you on here because I've heard your story before, and it's amazing. It's amazing. And like you got that voice that when you talk to somebody, like they ain't got no choice but to hear you.
Yeah.
And what comes from the heart touches the heart. So like ever since I've always like, God, you gotta get Josh on here. And now you on here.
Well,
man.
I've got such a loud voice, it kind of commands attention.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Man, thank you for coming on here. So you ready to get started?
Yeah.
All right. What's your name and where you from?
My name is Joshua. I'm originally from Mount Holly, North Carolina, Gaston County.
Okay, how old are you?
I'm 40 years old.
All right, 40 years old.
I was born on August the 4th of 1983.
1983.
Yes, sir.
Wow. So how was it for you growing up?
Well, I remember a lot growing up. I remember being at my great grandma Duval's house, and I remember sitting in her lap about 4 or 5 years old, and her reading the Bible to me.
Okay.
I remember that. I was at my great grandma's house and my grandma's house, my papa's house a lot when I was younger because my mom and dad used to work all the time. And I don't remember my mom and dad telling me this specifically, like coming out and saying it, but I've always known that I was adopted. And what it was is my mom had like a real bad ovarian cancer when she was young, and she couldn't have kids. So I knew I was adopted because of that. And that really, like growing up, I really didn't pay too much mind to it. I just kind of shoved it off. And
was it because was there love always there?
Yeah.
Love, attention?
Yeah. Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but like being around my family, I was always around my family, and I was like spoiled rotten. You know, and like I said, my mom and dad would work 60, 70, 80 hours a week. They owned their own company a lot of the times. You know, if they didn't own their own company, they were like the directors, bosses of the company they worked for, you know. And they were always, I wouldn't say well off or rich or anything, but I never wanted anything or needed anything, or I always had nice clothes. You know, I grew up with Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren.
Tommy Hilfiger was in back then.
Always had Jordans on, you know, back in the 90s. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, that was my life growing up. I did move around a lot. We moved out to the East Coast, like Jacksonville or I think it was Camp Lejeune out there.
Was it easy for you to make friends when you moved around?
It was, because I was real young. It's like 6, 7, 8 years old when we first moved. Okay. And then we moved back down. We moved back down to Gaston County, and I was in like I think the 4th grade when we moved back. Okay. And then for the first time, I had like a real stability as far as making friends and being in the same school and knowing people and having like consistent friends that are the same group of friends.
So
at that point.
So you said you had a good as far as the love, care, clothes, Jordans, all that was good.
All kinds of love, smothered in love.
So was there any trauma?
I didn't really have no trauma, Lois. Not that I can really think of, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, it was just, you know, I had a perfect little childhood. But I will say this is now, because it won't take long and I'll get into it. Like the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade is when I had a real, like I was really had that friendship and had that community of peers my age. Okay. And had like we had a real nice house, and we lived in McAdenville. And back then, McAdenville was like a textile mill community where the plant that they worked at owned all your houses and owned like the whole town, And so the people that lived there and went to that school, they were kind of, well, I wouldn't say they weren't like dirt floor poor or anything, but I always remember having like just all kinds of stuff. Everybody said I was rich.
You remember having more than your peers.
I guess you could say. I always said I was rich, and I didn't really know what that like. I didn't really know I didn't really see myself any different as being any different than them or any better than them. I didn't know any better.
So did you get in any trouble?
Yeah, I did one time actually in that little town, McAdenville. I went into a house, and I used to hang out with everybody after school at their house. And this is the first real trouble that I had gotten into. We had there was a house that was empty, like an apartment house, like a brick, them brick houses, apartments they used to have. And we went in there and we got into the house and we broke all the windows out. Okay. Broke all the windows. And my dad had to pick me up from the police station. And this was like when I was in probably the 5th grade.
And that's the only trouble you remember getting into?
That's the first time I remember getting into trouble. And really, that was about the only trouble I'd gotten into until high school.
So what kind of trouble? What kind of trouble was high school?
Well, let me tell you. After the 6th grade, my mom and dad got this job in Charlotte. And it was modeling, acting, and they bought this great big house and we moved away. And when we got to Charlotte, we were living off of Carmel Road. And I went to Carmel Junior High School, which is Carmel Middle School. And there, like that is where really, for the first time, I felt like out of place, like I didn't belong.
Okay.
And I wasn't accepted. I didn't fit in. I was different. Because of the fact, well, my voice for one thing, I have a real country voice, like sound like I'm from the mountains or from the country, And all the other kids were like, had that more uppity type, city voice. And they picked on me a lot, and I got picked on a lot during that time. And I really...
When you was in high school?
Well, junior high.
Junior high.
Yeah, this is like 6th, 7th, 8th grade.
Were you a fighter? Did you fight?
No, I just tried to talk, I tried to beef. I don't really know.
How did that make you feel when they picked on you?
I think I was depressed for like the first time in my life. Those 2 years that year that I was there. I didn't go there but a year, but I'd really gotten.
Do you think you were bullied?
Yeah, well, yeah, I would say bullied probably. I wouldn't say like bullied. More of it was just most of it was just all verbal.
Okay.
Like verbal bullying and stuff like that.
That's the
picking
word.
on
That's
stuff.
bad.
Yeah. And but we had moved back. They had gotten a different job and moved back to Gaston County. Or actually, they kept on working there, but they had bought my aunt's house.
Okay. And
my aunt's house was right down the road from my grandparents. And we moved in there. And then, let me go back. I played football before we moved out to Charlotte. So when we moved to Mount Holly, I didn't go to school with all those kids, but I played football with some of those kids. And I knew those kids and I fit right back in again. Okay. And I got out, it pulled me out of it, But I remember in junior high, I started smoking like cigarettes and before we even moved to Charlotte. And I remember when we moved to Charlotte, they had a nanny for us and they fired her. And I remember after they fired her, they had some cigarettes. She left a pack of cigarettes there and I was smoking cigarettes.
You started smoking.
So I was hanging out with the kids that would smoke and it was kind of weird because I didn't know everybody. I didn't really know a whole lot of people there, but I fit in with them. And talked to them and hung out. I remember walking around the track one day at junior high school when I really started talking with the people there that had used like smoke weed and stuff. And I thought they were cool. and they talked to me and accepted me, and like I felt like I belonged with them.
All right. So did you start smoking weed too?
Well, I had acted like I did for a while. Like I told them I had smoked weed for a while.
Oh, you told them.
I acted like I did, but I really had not tried it yet.
Mm.
Okay, so that was like the last year of junior high and middle school, because it had switched during that time. It went from middle school to junior high,
Okay.
and like the 6th grade was like the 7th grade was. But anyway, I got into high school. I was 15, and finally, like I remember, it was probably my freshman year being in high school, and that's all I got. Those people, like I could fit in with anybody. I could make myself be whoever I needed to. Like I remember all the different cliques. Like
Yeah.
they had like the jocks and the stoners and the preppies and
You hung with all of them.
You know, the rock and roll crowd and then the gothic people crowd. I could fit in with any of them that I needed to fit in with. But like the pothead stoner, you know, rock and roll kids, they really, like I said, they really accepted me, and I've been hanging out with them probably closer than anybody else. And finally, I said to myself, I want to see what this feeling high feels like, getting high feels like.
Are you still in high school?
Yeah, well, I was a freshman. I was 15 years old, and I said, I want to know what this getting high feels like. I want to try to smoke the weed, because I'd felt like I had gone through all the emotions up until then. Like I knew what it felt like to be happy and sad, and I'd felt pretty much anything I could feel up to that point.
Okay.
And so now I wanted to feel something new and different.
So how did it make you feel?
Well, I got a bag, and I went home and went out to the woods, and I rolled it up in some notebook paper. I didn't really know what I was doing. And I smoked a little bit of it. No, I went to my sister's house and smoked a little bit of it with my sister for the first time, and I didn't really get high from it.
Okay.
I didn't. She said my eyes were red. She said I was high, but I didn't feel any different. I didn't feel like I felt like I did before I had smoked it. But the very next day, I took my dog out to the woods when I got off school the next day at home. And then I rolled some up, and I went out to the woods and had this chair that was laid back, and I was staring up at the trees. And I was high that time.
All right.
And I was in there from that point on, it was on.
It was
Like
ready to go.
that marijuana, man, was something that I just fell absolutely in love with. It was like the greatest thing that I'd ever had.
Made, yeah.
You know, it was just like the goodness.
Okay.
And I remember early on, like saving my lunch money to buy like $5 a thing, you know, like a little joint or whatever.
All right.
And I remember just always getting as much of it as I could, never wanting to, and then like just saving up all my money. From that point on, every dime I had was going towards that.
Weed.
Yeah. From when I was a teenager, I was gone.
So your parents, they didn't care?
Well, I was working too. I had a job at Pizza Hut.
That was my first job.
Yeah, I was a dishwasher.
Well, that was my first job on taking taxis and stuff.
Well, this is actually, I started smoking, and before I got that job. What got me into my job was probably 3 or 4 months after I started smoking. I had some friends that had some weed, and they had somehow convinced me to steal $200 out of my mom's pocketbook.
And you did it.
To buy some weed from them, and I got it, and it was fake weed. Like it had some real weed mixed in with it.
Yeah.
Like some buds was in there, but it was mostly like a big bag of oregano.
They flexed you.
You know, and so my dad made me go to work to pay that back.
Okay.
And
were your parents disciplinarians? Your foster parents?
Well, they really wasn't. They wasn't foster parents. They were like.
Well, your parents, were they disciplinarians?
Yeah. No, not really. I mean, they pretty much let me They'd yell at me.
That
My
was no-
dad whooped my ass a lot when I was a kid.
Okay, that's what. Okay,
But he didn't really beat the fuck out of me. My grandpa now.
he beat you.
My grandpa was old school. He'd take off the belt and chase you down, up and down. He was real bad on my mom and my dad, or my mom and her brother.
Yeah.
My Uncle Richard, and I hear them. They say they went to church and stuff. You know, like whelps on their legs and backs and be bleeding and stuff real bad.
So you got this job at Pizza Hut. You done started. You done stole money to buy weed.
Yeah.
Got this habit. You done stole money to buy weed. Did you think you had a problem?
Well, let me go back a little bit, just a second. Coming up through junior high school, well, I've been going to church and knowing about God. I remember my grandma used to read it to me when I was a little kid. Because I want to keep God into this too. Like grew up in church. Like my family would go to church and everything. I just wanted to. I was going to church and everything, and I had a job, and we moved in. My mom and dad. I finally dropped out of high school. I did so horrible in high school. I just dropped out. Just completely said, "Fuck it,
I'm out."
Yeah. And I got into college at CPCC over in Charlotte, and I did horrible at that.
I went to see Piedmont Community College.
Did you?
Yeah.
I crashed and burned fast. I was not nowhere near ready to go to college.
Yeah, so I just was there. I think I was just on a roster. I never went to school.
You never went to class?
No, I never went. I think I may have went once or twice, but that was it.
I went the whole time and never got a passing grade.
So, did you continue going to church?
Yeah, well, no, not really. By the time I dropped out, I went pretty steadily through junior high and the time I was in school. But by the time I had dropped out of school when I was working and all that, I had just completely stopped going to church altogether.
Is your mom, dad, and grandparents still around?
My mom died.
Not while you was in high school.
No, later on. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about while you was in high school when you finished
Oh yeah,
school.
they're still around.
Okay.
All family's still around and everything. And this is the time that shortly after that, they got this big job flying around the country.
Okay.
And that was just the shit. They started their own company doing it after that. And they let me go with them. And so I got to go to all these big cities like LA, Chicago, Buffalo, all over the country.
But if they flying around the country,
I was going with them
the entire time?
A lot of the times, now at the very beginning, I would stay home. And this guy from my work would stay with me and kind of make sure I didn't go absolutely fucking crazy, I guess.
All right.
But
where's your sister?
My sister ran away a lot she's 10 years older than I am. When I was younger, like way younger, like she would run away a lot. And she got married when I was like 10. She was like 20. She got married real young.
You still talk to her?
She's still around, but she is just now getting back in the picture like these past 6-7 years. She was gone for a while.
Okay.
But she had gotten married and had kids and all that when we moved out to Jacksonville. When we left when I was younger, remember I said we moved out to the East Coast for a while. She had met a Marine at that Marine base up there they have.
In Jacksonville?
Yeah, I married him and had a little girl named Jenna. And but in high school, she was still around, but she was taking care of. She had left that guy and got with a new guy, and they got their family. They're still together, and they're still around. But
So fast forward, your mom, they're traveling.
Yeah, that's what I want to get back to is doing all that. That was a blast.
It was.
I was sniffing cocaine at that point, and and that was like a modeling company.
Where were you at when you sniffed your first cocaine?
I was hanging out with some buddies of mine in Gaston. I wasn't working.
Gas house.
Yeah, well, that's where I grew up.
Gas house.
That's the county I grew up in.
Yeah.
You know, that was me. I'm a Gaston County redneck.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so and my mom and dad knew I was smoking weed at that point. I got arrested. With like a quarter pound,
Okay.
4 ounces.
All right.
And I got it, and my mom and dad's very best friend, her husband was like the biggest attorney you could get in Gaston County. He was the kind of guy that played golf with the judges, you know.
All right. That's who you got.
He showed his face in the courtroom and you were off, you know.
All right.
And so he gave me a discount because we were real good friends of the family. He gave me it was like $750.
Yeah.
And I walked away.
Wow.
And got that off the record. But again, my mom and dad that was the first time I really got in real trouble.
So we're talking about the cocaine, like your first time doing cocaine. Who were you with?
Just some buddies. I mean, I could name names, but it was just.
Well, you ain't got to name names.
No, it's just some friends from high school.
Peers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did it make you feel?
It made me feel good. I remember wanting to do more of it and wanting to. It's almost like the marijuana, you know, just took off and wanted to use it. I knew it was bad though, and I couldn't do it as much. I shouldn't do it as much. You know, like marijuana didn't really affect my conscience, but it's like sniffing cocaine. I would be like I have a guilty conscience.
Okay, yeah, I see. I know exactly what you're saying.
And this whole time I've been drinking too.
Okay.
By this point, I was into drinking a bit too. Alcohol never really was my thing though. But anyway, they bought a house down here at the beach. And it took me a while to finally want to agree to move down here. I stayed in that house up there as long as I could. And I finally moved down here with them. And then a while after that, they sold my aunt's house. But down here, I met some people. I met this guy smoking weed at a gas station. Later on down the road, I went to his house to try to get some weed, and he wasn't there. And his roommate was there, though. And I was hanging out with his roommate, and they said they were going to go get something, and they were getting hard, you know, the rock, if you want to put it.
Crack.
Yeah, let's just go on out and say it. Why not?
Get some crack.
Yeah, and I smoked it once or twice, and I didn't really think it was a big deal.
Okay.
I didn't really get hooked. I didn't really get it, you know.
Okay.
I guess it was
fun.
I didn't really get it the first couple of times I'd smoked it. So this was like a she transvestite type I did this with.
Okay.
But and from that point, Louis, when I did that time I did it there though, I had actually got it. And buddy, man, from then it was.
You got what, Josh?
I got that hit.
What hit? What did you get?
That was that rock. It was that what they say, the drop.
There was some drop.
It took me over. Like it took over my whole everything. I was hooked.
So it was that drop.
And I needed it's like as soon as I took it, I remember wanting to have more of it as soon as I did it.
So
it was crazy wanting. It's kind of hard to describe that feeling unless you've actually, you know what I'm talking about. Like,
no, tell me about it. Tell me about what was the feeling? What was
the feeling? Like I got real tight and like the whole body was like seized up and like I was zoned in. My head was like zoned in real. It felt like it overtook my whole body.
Okay.
It felt really, really, really good. But as I say that at the same time, it felt really, really good and really, really high and like jolted and zoned up and ready to go. It would also make you want more of it, as much as you could get of it. Like just completely take over everything.
Everything.
Like it would just completely, it'd be like you were in water, drowning in water, wanting to get air. That's how much you would want.
So if crack is making you just want it all the time, of course you wasn't getting it for free.
No, I was having to steal at that point.
Were you working prior to?
I was working.
Your first time getting that drop.
Yeah, I would take jobs at different places, you know, work here and there. I never really put a whole lot into work because, like I said, I grew up the poor little rich kid my mom and dad had, so I just thought working was like a joke. I was like, I'd say probably 18, 19, 20
How
years
old were
old.
you when you smoked that drop?
You keep saying it like that. I was probably 20.
20.
Yeah. And
And you're how old now?
I'm 40 now. And
How
I
long?
soon started taking stuff out of my mom and dad's house to get it. I would take their car, like they gave me this, I had like this convertible Mustang that they had, and they would let me drive it around, and I would take it, just give it to the dope dealer. And I would take checks and write it out and cash them with their names on it, you know, forge checks to get it. I would just do whatever I had to do to get it, you know, just take stuff to a dope man, you know, TVs, you know, electric guitars, you know, whatever I could find,
Yeah.
you know, like laptops, you know. I mean, I'm looking at stuff here, you know, like whatever I could get my hands on that was worth any value would be turned into dope.
I feel that.
You know,
yeah, I
and
know
that's
exactly
how my
where
life
you're coming
was.
from. Everything must go.
You know, and that's how my life was. And in 2007, I decided that I didn't want to get high anymore.
In 2007.
Yeah, I decided.
How long had you been getting high?
Well, this is what I decided. I decided this is probably from 2000 until 2007. So
Okay,
probably been 7
years.
years.
Okay.
Run. And I decided, well, I didn't really decide. I wanted to keep on smoking weed, and I decided I wanted to stop smoking crack. Okay, I didn't want to smoke crack no more, but in that process, I said with my mom and dad did some research and got me into the hospital. I went in there and said I wanted to kill myself up at Grand Strand, and they got me into this 28-day in rehab in Columbia. It's Morris Village. It's run by the state.
A recovery program.
A rehab, and I went to it. And during this time, like a week or two after I got there, you know, I decided I was going to keep on smoking weed when I got out.
All right.
And occasionally drink a little bit of beer here and there. And that's the way I was going to do it. You know, I was going to go to their meetings here and there.
You just wasn't going to smoke no more crack.
That's right.
Like everything else was good. Like weed, the beer is good. Yeah. You just can't smoke crack.
At the time I was at the hospital, the time I went to rehab, there was a guy in the hospital in the rehab with me the whole time. And I'm not going to say his name either. He don't really come around a whole lot anymore. He used to though, but he had taken me to a couple meetings. I went to New Day up here and stuff like that, but it didn't. It was like a couple weeks after I got out of that, like I was wanting to use. And I remember what they were told. They told me to call people and talk to people on the phone and everything. And I just remember that being like the silliest thing in the world was to tell somebody that I was wanting to use.
Because you're a grown man.
You know, I thought it was silly. I thought it was childish, you know, and like, I don't know. But sure enough, I remember the urge coming on me and me really not wanting to do it, but just didn't know how to make that urge go.
So how long after detox did you go start back smoking?
It was about, I'd say probably 3 weeks, maybe.
3 weeks, and you was back at it. How fast did you get back to where you was prior to detox?
Pretty fast.
Pretty fast.
Yeah, I was immediately, like the very same day I was.
Already back?
Yeah, down to that point again.
Did you have a vehicle?
Yeah. I remember that was my vehicles that my mom and dad had. They were my mom and dad's vehicles, and that was one of my main tickets of being able to get dope all the time was just by renting out their vehicles.
Okay.
You know, I'd steal my mom's medication, you know, and she would, because my mom was always in real bad pain. She had real bad health problems. She had fibromyalgia. She had lymphedema. She had rheumatoid arthritis. She had chronic fatigue. She had blood clots. I mean, I could just keep on listing all the stuff that's wrong with her. I would steal her medications and give it to the dope man, you know.
I ain't care nothing about.
This went on until 2012. When 2012 came, like I remember the last probably 6 months before 2012, I was just so hard on it, Lewis. I mean, it was just
Crack.
It was just been to a whole nother fucking level. Like,
so wait, Joshua, hold on a second. So when you were stealing your mom medication and you knew that she needed it, did it make you feel any kind of way, or you just was concerned about Joshua?
I was just concerned about me and getting mine and not worried about the consequences. Or
was there ever a time that you can remember she was in pain and you had done stole her medication?
Yeah, I remember her. Well, now that I think back about it, I remember her going through withdrawals. But what I remember most, like the most pain that she had went through, wasn't really from her withdrawing from the medicine that I take. The most pain that my mom went through was me doing the how do you say, not depressed, the disappointment in her son, her one and only son, and not knowing where he is day after day after day, not knowing what's going on with him, don't know if he's dead or alive. Like, she would call me on the phone and call, wanting to know where her son's at, you know. And occasionally at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I would answer and let her come and pick me up. And when we had to go spend days looking for a car, you know, occasionally that would happen. You know, and then I'd stay at home for a week or two, and then after that, I was right back at it again.
Take the car again.
You know, and it stayed like that till 2012. Like, I would come home, when I got in the car, I would come home, and I would steal stuff and take it back out. You know, as long as I could, I would steal stuff and get money. Sometimes I'd work and keep a job long enough to get a paycheck or something, you know.
Okay.
But I mean, it really wasn't anything consistent. But in 2012, my dad come and he said, "Hey, I'm done with you. You're leaving. You're not allowed here at the house no more. You know, you can go to hell. You're done. You're not allowed here. We don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. You're done." And at that point, I had a girlfriend at that point. She was a married woman. She got into all kinds of mess, just as bad as I was, you know. But she was like this cute little blonde that was married that I had a crush on. That I got to screw with sometimes, you know. It made me happy. But I remember him coming to me and saying that we're just done with you. We won't have anything to do with you. And then I said, well, I'm going to go back. I'm not going back to rehab again unless I can go to the same place I went to before. So I had to wait a while, and eventually I got to go. And I remember my dad driving me up there to that rehab again. And I remember him dropping me off. And I remember saying to him, but this is something that you're making me want to do.
It's 2012.
You're doing, yeah. This is March. When I got there, it was March the 7th.
Okay.
My clean date was March the 7th, 2012. And I remember saying to him, this is something you're doing to me. I don't really want to do this. I remember saying that to him. And I also remember staying there. And at this point, like, I realized this is when what they say, like, the pink cloud started forming. And this is like the first time that I'd been clean more than a day in years.
So you mentioned pink cloud. That's where you're feeling good about yourself, got a little bit of weight back, eating, I got rest.
Like the first day I had clean and more since 07 when I've been there.
Wow.
You know, and like I started feeling like I had a smile on my face. And all these emotions that had been bogged down from years of drug use started coming out, you know, and like the happiness would come out and sadness would come out, and it just felt really, really, really good all of a sudden. So I started listening to these counselors, and I started listening to the people when they would come in at night and do H&I, and they would bring like a presentation in there of hospitals and institutions of like the recovery fellowships. you know, and I started listening to them. And I made it a plan. I'm going to do whatever they tell me to do, and I'm going to do what they say this time.
Yeah.
You know.
So did you stay clean?
Well, my mom and dad wouldn't let me back at the house.
Okay.
They had actually let me come back a week because it was Easter. And I had plans to have some friends come down from North Carolina, but that never did work. But after a week of being there, I went and moved into they went away
Okay.
to Greenville, and I'd stay clean that week. I went to some meetings and stuff, you know, and I did as much as I could do. And then I went to Greenville, and it was weird. Like I was didn't know anybody there at all. I got there. I was left on a Greyhound bus, and I got there. It was like 10, 11 o'clock at night when I finally got there to Greenville, and I was calling this number that I had for this recovery house, and they were supposed to pick me up. And I remember being in that town at 10, 11 o'clock at night in the middle of the night, not knowing anybody. And it was March, so it was a little chilly. This is the upstate in the mountains, you know, and not knowing anybody. And I remember being almost scared at that point, like not knowing what I'm about to get into, like the fear and the uncertainty, I guess you'd say. And this recovery house was like no joke. It was like nothing they have here in Myrtle Beach. It was an abandoned hotel, and they had like hooked up with Greenville had like temp services all over the place.
Okay.
So when you got there, they sent you to a temp service, and you were working the very next day. And the recovery house would take your paycheck. You signed a power of attorney, and they would take your paycheck from you, and they would give you like $60 a week until you got caught up on all the money you owed them.
Okay.
And you'd have to. It was like you walked in owing them like $800 or $900. So, and it would take 3 or 4 months to finally get it caught up before they would actually give you your paycheck.
How long did you stay there?
I stayed there for a whole year.
And you stayed clean the whole time?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I've been there for a week or so. I was actually fortunate to be able to get my own job working at the BMW factory. I told them that's what I wanted to do. I went up there to the place. They took me up there, and I got the job working at the BMW factory.
Okay.
In Greenville. And I thought that was the shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a friend down here that said that was his dream to work there, you know. So I got to work there, and I just thought that was the shit, you know. I was working at BMW. You know, I had to take a drug test to get in. I passed the drug test, a little P test.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember working there all in the middle of the night. But I remember getting off and going, and because they would take you to meetings too.
Okay.
That recovery house had a little van. They'd take you to the house. They had meetings there. They had it was like a big abandoned motel that they turned into a recovery house. It was 2 people to a room as motel rooms. But on the bottom, they had blocked out like 4 or 5 rooms and made it into one big open meeting spot. So they had meetings there, but I got in the van and left to an outside meeting. And that outside meeting that I went to, that's the first time I really heard the message of recovery. The life-saving message, the identification of hearing somebody tell their story and speak at a real recovery meeting, that I felt that. Me too, I felt like that. I can identify with that.
So somebody share their story, and then you
it wasn't a story, more it was like an open discussion.
Okay. They shared.
But I heard like 3 or 4 different people, you know, share. And like I got there, the meetings they went to in Greenville, it was weird because they were all like black people there.
Okay.
Like I would remember going there and being like one of the only white people that was there at all. But I tell you, it didn't really, for the first time in my life, I was in like a different kind of environment like that. But it didn't matter. Like I felt welcomed. I didn't feel a part of or against, or it's different. I felt like I belonged there, and I felt accepted and welcomed and warmed, and you know.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. Growing up, like after while you was in high school and after high school, did you feel accepted and wanted? Like, did you feel like you fit in, or
the crowd that I did. The only time I didn't really feel like when I went away, when we moved to Charlotte, that really being around all those kids in Charlotte that made fun of me and stuff. That was like really the first time, the only time I really
did
felt out of place.
Okay, all right. So you working at the BMW place?
Yeah, and I got 90 days clean. Well, I had 90 days working at that BMW place. A little over 90 days clean. You know, I'd been there.
What?
You know, it was like a month I had clean before I even got to Greenville. So after working at that place, BMW, it was through a temp service that was through a subcontractor. But you had to take a hair test after 90 days. And I remember going to the hair test, and I remember a couple of days later them calling me and telling me that I failed the hair test for marijuana and cocaine. And I said, well, how was that even freaking possible?
And you had not smoked since you've been clean.
I had not used any cocaine or smoked any marijuana since March the 7th.
Okay.
And this was 4.5 months after that. You know? And I remember the very first thought that had come into my mind was I want to use. And I talked to the manager there, and he calmed me down and everything. And that didn't last, though. That wanting to use kind of went away pretty fast, like on its own.
Did they let you stay at the job?
No, they fired me from the job, like I couldn't go back to work. The recovery house got me I went and worked at that one of their temp services a little bit, and then I got another job.
I'm sure they pissed you when you got back. I mean, you took your analysis from them
when you
got back and passed.
Yeah. But they were real strict. Like, they would knock on your door at 5 a.m. and if you wasn't ready to go to work, you were getting kicked out of there. You know, they were by the balls, that place was. Well, they had so many people trying to get in. So
you're at this. So how long did you stay there before you transitioned out?
Well, I stayed there for my whole first year.
You stayed there for a year.
I remember going to that meeting, and I remember there being a NASCAR race at Darlington on TV, and this was in the summertime. Or no, this is actually Labor Day in September. And I remember, I remember thinking, getting home from the meeting, and I remember thinking, watching that race, thinking that my dad's there, you know. And my good buddy, I called him my brother. I said, my dad and my brother's there, and they're probably having a blast and drinking beer and stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm supposed to be there drinking beer right now too. And I remember wanting to go leave that recovery house and go and get a beer and bring it back there and watch it and drink it while I watched the race. And I remember thinking that's what I wanted to do.
Did you do it?
And it was very soon into my thinking that I was starting to obsess and compulse about actually really wanting to go and get a beer.
Yeah.
And I remember that telephone. And I remember them saying that telephone, use that telephone. So for the first time I tried it, I said, why not? I want to try it. I want to try this telephone thing. And I remember calling, and I looked at I had a list of all the people at that group I went to. They had their own phone list already printed up to give people. And I remember looking at the clean dates on there. And there was this one on there, and this was 2012, and there was this one on there that had a clean date of it was like 1987. And that was the longest anybody had. So I called, it was a lady, and I called her. And she said, well, the first thing is you're supposed to call me. And I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know. Like, it's the first time I'm ever calling anybody, you know?
That's the first thing that she said?
Yeah, but she said, I want you to go, and I want you to go outside and get by yourself and get on your hands and knees and pray and tell God that's what you're thinking about doing. And then she said, you're at that recovery house. When you get done praying, go and find a couple other guys that you normally talk to and let them know you're thinking about going and getting a beer. And then she said, if it's something, if you still feel like drinking after that, Then why don't you go find the manager at that recovery house and talk to him for a bit, and then call me back if you're still thinking about it. So that's what I did, and that one phone call saved my life. But I remember going to them meetings. I remember one time in them meetings. I'm gonna get through it as fast as I can.
You good?
But I remember going to them meetings one time and coming in and sharing about the recovery place, taking my whole paycheck and not really being able to afford to get a lot of food and not being able to afford to get a lot of cigarettes. And I remember them people, not really asking for anything. I wasn't asking her, say, can you get this? I was telling them where I was at and how I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And like the next week, I remember them coming in there. It was so nice. They came in so freaking beautiful. They bought like a big thing of food. They gave me a $50 bill, and bought me a couple packs of cigarettes, and that was so heartwarming and out of love, because I wasn't asking. When I shared that in the meeting, I wasn't even trying to come as cross as asking for help or wanting. I was just trying to tell them where I was at and what was going on with me, and that was really nice. And I got a sponsor, and I started working the steps, and I managed to work all the steps when I was there with a sponsor on a paper. And I moved down here to the beach. After I got a year clean, and I felt I think it was God telling me, because this point I'd really improved my relationship with God. At this point, I'm talking to God like I'm talking to you right now. I was really, really close with God, and I can remember. I'm pretty sure it was like God was just pulling me down here, telling me I needed to be down here to take care of my mom.
Okay.
And I got down here. I remember like moving, like scouting it out. I came down here like a month before I moved down here and scouted out the meetings and the recovery and seeing what it was going to be like and see if I was going to be able to work it or not, And so I finally moved down here, and here comes this guy that remembered me from when I came during that week, Joshua, and he remembered my name a month or two later, only seen me like twice. He remembered my name, and this guy was like, later on I found out like he was like he was a big guy, but he was like really like the glue that held this whole area of recovery together. Like this was the man that everybody was his best friend. Everybody loved this man. They were and I remember asking him to be my sponsor when I got down here. And we had worked, and soon after that, I got some sponsees. Some people asked me to sponsor them with the steps. And so I was a sponsor now. This one guy was a preacher that asked me to sponsor him. And my home group had asked me to be the representative and go to area for them. And I got a job at Krispy Kreme Donuts. And then I got promoted at Krispy Kreme, and I was like the shift manager.
Yeah.
And man, I thought I was the shit. I got like so cocky and arrogant.
So I really learned. I learned something that like you got that job. You was feeling good about Joshua now because you had been down a dark path, a dark road. Now you're getting a job. You're getting promoted. You're in recovery. You got sponsees. Your home group. Now you back to feeling wanted again.
I'm really starting to be a member of society. Man. Like everybody else, like the people you see driving their cars down the road, going to work, that's what I'm doing. I'm like a regular person of the world, I'm doing all this, and I get real cocky all of a sudden. Like I see people that are coming here, and they would come into the meetings that I would be going to, and they would talk about relapsing and getting high again. And I remember hearing some of them having like years clean and still ain't worked all the steps. And I remember picking those people apart and thinking I was better than they was.
I remember I remember I was doing I said something in the meeting, and you know how we say those you know how we say those things during the read, and at the end of the read is when they read like how it works or somebody, and we were saying that this addict came right behind me, and he said we don't need all that stuff in our meetings. He said it to everybody.
Oh, yeah?
I felt kind of bad.
Like when they're chanting, when
they doing it, like when you read and we say,
like the chants and stuff.
And he came right behind me. And he came right behind me and said that they don't need our readings.
A lot of people don't like that.
And they don't like that. I didn't do it. I didn't do it that, but I'm just talking about how it made me feel at the time.
Okay.
How did
that make you feel?
It did. I didn't feel good. Not when you, because I feel like if I'm in the wrong, if I'm doing something wrong, you and I was kind of fairly new. This person had decades.
Okay, so it's an old timer coming to a new timer.
If I'm doing something wrong, you pull me to the side.
Yeah.
Or that ain't how you do it.
I know what you the whole group.
What you saying, yeah, you got a lot of applause, like what you said, because what I figured out is confrontation and negativity, it get those kind of responses. Like people, we're attracted to that. We naturally attracted to stuff like that, and it did, and I understand that. Well, I was mad for a while. I was mad for a while. Like I had to do some work on me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't feel good. I stuff was running through my mind like.
This wasn't me, was it?
No.
Okay.
Like that stuff. Like just punch them or do something, because you know
less than
you don't know, like that ain't how you do stuff. Not that ain't how you handle nothing. If you want, you pull people, and I've seen it several times. Okay,
so this spot city that I got was a preacher. Okay, let me tell you about that since you're talking about something like that right there. Okay, so this spot city comes along and he starts getting into the steps, and he spits out his first 3 steps really, really good. You know, and this dude's like a preacher. And he gets to the 4th step, and he gets stuck. And like the way that I was going through that particular step, like I was told to pray for 10 days for the willingness, or no, pray for 7 days for the willingness to get honest.
Okay.
So that's what I did. I prayed for 7 days and asked God for 7 days. You know, I prayed 3 or 4 times a day and asked God to give me the willingness to be honest, give me the willingness to get honest, do whatever I can. And after the 7 days was up, then I took 10 days. It was 10 days I had to write my entire life story. And he had started on that, and he got like halfway through it, and he just couldn't write no more. And this had gone on for a couple weeks. Like the 10 days done come and gone. So this is like a month later, and I called him out like in the meeting. Like I've been getting on his ass about it. I called him out in the middle of Denny's down there when because we all used to go, all of us after the meeting back then in the days, we used to go out and eat, like a whole 20, 30 head of us. After the meeting, we would go out and eat. So I called him out in front of the whole entire group of people down there at Denny's in Myrtle Beach and made him feel like that. And
that people don't feel. I mean, that's not a good feeling.
And I remember, like now to this day, I know I feel.
It makes you feel horrible, don't it?
Yeah, I did that to him.
And when I do, and early on when I was doing some messed up stuff like that, the people, it don't make me feel good.
No.
Like I'm not gonna make you feel less than or make you feel down just so I can be on the right end of the spectrum. No. Now I take your feelings. If am I gonna say something to hurt Joshua?
Yeah.
And what I say, how would I feel if Joshua said that same thing to me? I wouldn't feel good at all.
Nowadays it seems like I'm
more.
For the first time in my life, like I'm getting to a point where I actually can start thinking before I speak.
Yeah.
And start being a little bit more slow to speak and quick to listen.
It's a process. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and that's what got me into a lot of trouble when I was younger.
Yeah, you was talking about your the fourth step.
Yeah.
I remember working my first fourth step. It was in 2012. I was working
the same year as me.
Yeah, it was in 2012. I was at this program in Hickory, North Carolina.
Okay.
I was at this program and I had a sponsor and he and we went on and I remember going over my fourth step. Like it was so brief and so shallow.
Yeah.
Like he gave that fourth step back to me.
Really?
Told me I need to do some more writing.
Really?
And then which it was the truth.
Yeah.
Because I was still holding on to that. Yeah, I'm not telling him this.
Yeah.
I'm not telling him that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like you got to realize like when you're in the streets, you got to protect yourself.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got to protect your image. You got to protect the way people view you. You got to protect all that. So now you got to this man telling me to write my story on paper about everything.
And now that we're talking about it, there was like, well, get over here. There was like a lot of that first fourth step. There was a lot of stuff that I left out, like as far as like sexual stuff that I had gone through when I was in like active addiction that I left out, you know, and I got like free. It did what it needed to do at the time. You know, God. I firmly believe that everybody gets what they deserve when they need it or whatever. It's exactly what they need when they need it, and that's what I needed at the time, and that's what I got at the time is but doing it like again, you know, and again, you know, like a second and third time, it gets deeper, you know, and I'm willing to reveal stuff that I thought I would never
reveal,
talk to other people or let anybody know. And because of that, it's very liberating to get me to a point where I'm not carrying around the weight and the baggage. So I remember I talked about being adopted, and like my whole life being adopted, I always viewed it like my mom gave me up. I don't want. This is my family now. This is the only mom I have. This is my mama. This is my dad. Okay. That lady that gave me up, she's just some woman, and that's the way I seen it my whole entire life. Okay, and that's the way that I looked at it. And when I'd gotten to Greenville, and I was in that recovery house for the very first time, I remember that came up, me thinking about that, Lewis. And I don't know how long I had clean at that point, but I do remember it was in my first year. And I remember talking to one of my buddies there and saying, and I became willing to say something, talk to somebody about it. And I remember just crying so hard. Like I'd never in my life cried that hard over anything before. And I remember
you're talking about that particular.
Yeah, like I remember saying that I'm willing to admit that's my mom, and I'm willing to talk to her and find out more about it and get involved with it. And I remember like that being like taking such a huge like it took such a huge weight and burden off of my shoulders, like I've been carrying around my whole entire life. You know, just that.
How you was able to talk to somebody about
it. And I remember, like I said, I just remember crying as hard as I could. And that was like the first little healing thing that I had.
When you're able to talk to someone about something you're going through, it's so free.
Yeah.
It's so much freedom. But now it's hard to talk to somebody because you got so many judgmental people.
Oh, I know.
And
it's got to be the right person.
And a lot of times you hear like, oh, once I put it on the floor, I've done some work. And not everybody ain't done that work.
Yeah.
And some people like, everybody ain't done that work.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm at a place in my life right now where I can admit anything that I've ever done.
Yeah.
If the occasion comes, if it need, I can
Yeah.
admit anything. I don't have secrets. I
Yeah.
don't got no secrets no more. You
Yeah.
know.
And it takes just so much off of
It
you.
does.
Like the weight is gone. Like it's just so
Yeah,
free.
it's
and
freeing, man.
liberating,
I said that. Yeah, man. Listen, I was in a. I did I told my story, and I was saying and what was so crippling about me in my story is the part where I sold myself for drugs.
Yeah.
And like people knew that, and not like a lot of people. Some people knew, but not a lot of people, because they was around when I was using drugs and I was doing all this. So for me, like, to get on my podcast and say, yes, I did. That's how I use.
Yeah.
I use hard. Like
I remember like some of the stuff I got into that I'll share here just quickly. Like I remember one time having to grab this guy's ass and squeeze his ass, and while he got off, and that was kind of screwed up and messed me up a little bit, And I remember another time having to like pull on this guy's nipple while he smoked, and that was kind of screwed up.
Yeah.
I didn't really have to do a whole lot sexually, like, which I'm glad and fortunate of. I thank God that I didn't, that really wasn't a bottom that I had to go through.
If opportunity would have presented
Exactly.
itself,
Probably so. Yeah, I wouldn't put myself past it. But I do remember, like, all this time having that job at Krispy Kreme and having that sponsee, and I had a really banging hot girl over there back then too. That was in, like, I met her in recovery and having all this nice stuff, and I thought I was somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I was cocky. And as the book says, cockiness is a red light indicator. And I thought I wasn't really anonymous anymore. I didn't really have any anonymity because I was better than everybody else. And shortly after that, Lewis, and me steady thinking I was better than everybody else. I remember coming home from work and not feeling like going to a meeting. And I remember I was at a point where I was going from probably, I'd say 7, 8, 9 meetings a week, and dwindled down to 1 or 2 a week. And shortly after that, like, I had a thought of, just like a random thought of using, like, of drugs. And it passed, and a day or two later it came back, and it stayed a little bit longer. And it passed again, and then this would go on off and on. And like, I think a couple weeks into it, before you knew it, it was like every single thought that I had, that's all I could think about was drugs and using. And I was clean, but that's my whole entire thought process. My mind was set on using.
And you wasn't picking up the phone.
Didn't call. I called people, but didn't talk about that.
Yeah.
Didn't talk about not wanting to use.
So did you use?
I called. I remember calling this guy that's passed away now. You know who I'm speaking of, but miss him terribly. But because he had relapsed. He was a guy that had relapsed, and I remember calling him and telling him I was thinking about using and thinking about actually doing it. And he told me it was going to suck. Told me how I was going to lose everything and just do all kinds of, And I remember thinking, well, I'll still keep my job. I'll still be able to keep that. And I remember my very last thing that I was like thinking of, my last thoughts that I was thinking was, I'm making a clear conscience decision of my own free will, my own thought process. This is me doing this. Mm-hmm. My decision, me doing this to do this. And I used. And
was it different?
The weight and the guilt was there.
Was it different?
No, it wasn't different. It did the same thing it was meant to do.
You had a little bit more stuff now, though.
Well, I remember going through the $500 that I had saved up in just a couple of days, like a day and a half. I think all that $500 was gone.
How long did you stay out there?
It was just probably a night or two, but
Then you came back?
no. Like I remember people from the community like calling me.
Yeah.
Like people from the recovery community, the 12-step community, like dozens of them just calling and calling and calling and calling. I didn't answer nobody.
Mm.
And I remember because this is what happened. So I just got so bad on it, and it got to the point where I was willing to do whatever I could to, got back to that point again.
Yeah.
I was bad.
Desperation.
Whatever. I was an animal at that point again. And this is probably like not even a year later, but I remember thinking about this for a while, and actually one day I finally got up enough guts to do it, and I was at PetSmart over on 544,
Mm-hmm.
and riding around in that parking lot, and I rode around in it for probably 45 minutes to an hour thinking about finding somebody and robbing them. So I'd found, like, I'd looked for like and there's a little old lady, and I seen this little old lady, and I figured she'd be the easiest one to rob, put up the least amount of fight, And I remember just stealing her pocket, went up asking for directions, acting like I was lost, and got her to talking to me, and just grabbed her pocketbook and ran off. And I remember her like holding on to the pocketbook and me dragging her down the road while I was in the car, her just holding on to the pocketbook, and she got hurt. She was okay though, but I remember this is like a little old somebody's grandma, like in her 70s, and that was pretty bad. It was like a felony, like a big time felony, strong arm robbery, and I was facing some jail time. And so the lawyers that I had, they were able to get me on drug court, and I went to drug court, and I don't really.
You completed it.
I completed it, and I really don't. This is during the time that I went to drug court. My mom had died during that time, and towards the end of it, right before I completed it, my mom had died. And I remember, this is what I remember. I was clean for like 2 years at this point, right when she died again. And I remember somebody, and this is like another God thing. I remember like talking to, because I had talked to so many people on the phone. Because that's me. I'm like a telephone junkie talking on,
Mm-hmm.
And I remember saying like, well, I was clean for like 2.5 years, and then I kind of relapsed and went back out, and now I'm clean for 2.5 years again. And they say, well, just stop and think you gave your mom the best 5 years that she'd ever had in her entire life. And to this day, I swear that was God telling me that,
Wow.
And I remember the community was there. But I remember also being in that and doing that bit of recovery. I was doing it for the court. I really wasn't doing it for myself.
Stay out of jail.
Just to stay out of jail. I didn't really, and I remember the drug court recovery not really feeding me as much as the 12-step recovery would. Not getting as much out of it. So was you
going to drug court in 12
Oh yeah,
step?
I had to. That was a part of was like a thing of the.
So how long do you have clean today? Right now?
I have 2 years, just had 2 years. But this is still, I went back and got high after that drug court.
After drug court?
Yeah, I went back and used for a couple more years. And
but you made it back.
Yeah, I made it back. I'm almost done here. This is the thing. I'm almost done. I had gotten out of work real bad. My landlord that we had in Conway, I lived at this place for like 4 years, okay? And he was like a sex fiend. Like he had a little girl, like she was younger than I am, a little bit younger, in her 30s, And it was like his sex girl. But he had told everybody that was his daughter, but it was actually like his little sex girlfriend. And then he had a wife, and then he had a son. So them 4 people, him, his son, his sex girl, his wife, all 4 of them owned all these properties that he maintained and all his rental properties, okay? And he had went online, and he was like an old man, didn't really know too much about Facebook or TikTok or the internet or anything like that at all. It was like an old man, in his 70s, 80s. And he had wound up sending, I think it was $74,000 overseas for a mail order bride, and the mail order bride was like a fake person that didn't really even exist, and he was like completely broke. And his son and his wife mainly forced him to sell all of his rental properties to recoup some of his money. So what I was the last. Me and Jeannie were the last people there out of all of his trailers that he had. We were the last ones to go, and he took us to court. We were the only ones he had to take to court, but he took us to court, and he said, y'all got to go. He gave us till Monday to get out, and we stayed there probably a month and a half after Monday because we didn't have nowhere else to go. And I'm grateful he didn't call the police and have them come and put us out. I'm grateful for that. But I got a call. I filled out some phone calls, and somebody said, we're down here in Charleston. We'll pay you $1,000 a week to go and do some drilling work down there. So I moved down there in Charleston and got down there in this hotel room. And I paid for the hotel room out of my own pocket. And I'd stayed down there. I was living in the hotel. And December came, Christmas time came, and there was like no work. And no work at all. And I was already smoking weed at this point, And being in that area at that motel, that was a really rough. There's nothing but prostitution in and out, drugs in and out, homeless all over the place. Just a real bad area in that hotel I was in. And it wasn't long. I was stepped outside and said, "Hey man, I got some ice." I was out there smoking a cigarette, and it was like, "I got some ice," and then I was off, and I was gone.
Back to the races.
And I remember my wife calling me, because my wife had her own problems going on then, and she was kind of like totally dependent on me. Like,
had her own problems. Okay.
Yeah, I don't really want to get into that.
Okay, no.
She was like, basically, her whole world revolved around me at that point.
Okay.
And I was gone, and I remember in there, her being locked up in one of the hotel rooms with that guy, and her walking around outside the hotel rooms, calling my name, screaming out my name, wondering where I was at, and having like the maids at that place call me and scream where I was at, and knocking on doors and calling my phone and not answering. And there's a lot of pain there. It brings me back to way back when, before I ever even got clean, and my mom calling me on the phone for days and days,
wondering where you at.
And there's a lot of pain there from that.
So
it really is.
So with you being clean a little bit over 2 years now?
Yeah. Well, after I went through that, it was at Christmas time, on Christmas, and I called somebody and I said, I'm getting clean. And in January, and I didn't have no more work. The work stalled up. Didn't go to work for like 2 weeks. And I said, I'm getting clean. On January 1st, we moved back up here into my neighbor's house. I was living right beside where I used to live, my neighbor's house. I went to the meeting here at the coffee shop, and I picked up a white key tag. And here I am today.
You went over 2 years clean.
And
so let me ask you this. So how do you continue? How have you stayed clean for 2 years?
Well, I've done everything that you're supposed to do.
What are you supposed to do?
Well, I've just completely thrown my life into recovery. I've worked the steps, started getting into the steps again. Really haven't worked them as much this time as I have applied them, because I've worked them a few times.
So today you have made them phone calls. You got your network. You got numbers. You don't go back to the block and all that stuff.
I stay away from the old pieces, the bugaboos.
You don't want no more of that drop.
No. And like I said, I've thrown my life completely into recovery. I've gave it everything I've got.
100%.
You know, complete. I remember this. Like I did do the first 2 steps, and I remember this question on there on that first step saying, "What are the benefits of surrendering your life to the program?" And I couldn't get with that.
Okay.
There was like a block there. I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't know the benefits of it because I've never done it. I'm not giving my life away to this program.
So
So I called somebody. It's really screwed my head up on this. I had called several people. I brung it up at meetings, so this one guy asked me. He said, "Well, what makes sense to you?" And I said, "Turning my will and my life over to God. That makes sense to me." And it took me a while to get to this point, but I finally said, "You know what?
I surrender."
I got sat down at the table. It wasn't nothing else there. The lights were. It was like this right here. You know, it wasn't nothing going on. And I broke down. And I said, "You know what? I'll turn my life over to take care of this program. Yeah, here it is. Take it from me. Do whatever you want to do with it. I give up."
I remember that surrender. I remember.
You know, and since then, I've just been keeping an open mind. And
I remember surrendering to the program because we surrendered to win today.
Yeah.
We keep fighting. We just gonna keep on getting what we always got. And that's
up until this point, like all my surrendering that I've done before that point was to God. You know, like giving like I had been through the first step, but not that way.
Not that way, okay.
You know,
thoroughly.
And I was like, well, I'm giving my life to the program now. You know, and this is like something completely different than God. I mean, I know it's a God-given program, yeah, but this is like something that man has his work in on too, you know.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times I see a lot of people, they try to combine the two and mix the two. When it is, they try to combine and mix the two with that thinking, the same way you thinking right now.
Yeah.
And what that does, you can't enjoy all the benefits that this program has to offer.
No, you really
got to surrender. You got to surrender to this program.
Yeah.
You know,
I surrendered to the program, and that got me to the point where I could realize actually God's something that's bigger than that. You know, God is He's over all of that, but the program is structured for us. You know, so I've tried to give it away to God and clear up some of my shortcomings. I mean, my defects are there, and that's what my defects are. You know, they're going to be there, but acting out on them and having shortcomings of my attitude and my actions, you know, that's something I still do, but I try to keep a watch on it, and keep a tight lid on it, you know.
So you got to get this program 100%.
Yeah, and I try to admit when I'm wrong today, and because I've applied this program thoroughly, because I've given my life over to God, because I've worked inventory work, and I've made amends, and all of that, like, I don't have a lot of guilt and baggage on me. So when I can get up in the morning and I can pray and I can meditate, when I meditate in the morning, I don't have the weight of 1,000 wrongdoings on me.
Yeah.
I don't have I don't have all this negativity and all the bad crime and the awful stuff that I've done to people. I don't have that weighing me down and pulling me down. So I can go to God in the morning time with a clear conscience and be clear and be able to meditate and not have a single thought come into my head for a minute, 5-10 minutes at a time without even a single thought coming in, like total clarity. Like nothing there,
that's peace,
like a real conscious a clear conscious contact, something that's truly marvelous. Like the words in my mouth can't even really tell you how good it actually can be. Like God, there's times when I feel like God's got me and I'm getting on it now. Because this is the part I really like talking about, like I feel like God's got me in the palm of his hand. Like and he's holding me and
Mm.
guiding me and putting me where he wants me. And like I feel like there's nothing that's going to hurt me in the whole world. I feel safe and I feel at peace, and I feel like it even goes deeper than joy. It goes into like words like serenity, and it gets into words like enlightenment, and gets into words like tranquility.
It's
and
deep.
bliss, you know? Yeah, deep.
I felt that joy just now when you were saying that. Don't you wish everybody could feel that?
Well, they can. Anybody,
can.
anybody.
Okay.
It's just
Anybody
they've got to
can
do
feel
the
it.
work. If you want what I have, you
Okay.
know, you got to do what I did to get it. You know, and that's the what I tell people. I'm not. There's nothing special about me.
You just did the work.
You know, but now I do wish everybody could have that. You know, but it's a lot of people. I think in society in general, or addicts, whether they've gotten high on drugs at any point in their life or not, you know, there's people addicted to work out here.
Yeah.
There's people addicted to sex out here. People spending money left and right, and they don't really see that they have a problem in their life, and they don't find the need to get any help, and they're just going to sit and keep on being the way they are in their life and not have any true joy. They're going to be a slave to whatever they're living for. Like today, I don't live for going and spending money on Krispy Kreme donuts, or I don't live for spending my whole paycheck on $1,000 DVDs, you know, or going and buying a Ralph Lauren shirt or $200 or $300 Jordans. I don't live for that today. I live for today. I truly can say that I live for God, and
that's awesome.
I live for God's will. You know, whatever God wants me to do, I pray and I ask God to take all of my desires and all of my wants and need, and just take them away from me and cast them far out of my life. And I pray and ask God to project His will onto me and mold me. Let me be put in His hands and mold me into the person that He wants me to be. You know, and that's
and He can do it. He can do it.
And evidently He's doing it. Like I'm here to tell you, like before, when I was in Charleston, like I was homeless. I moved into this lady's house that was my neighbor. And the only reason she let us stay there is because her like boyfriend, you know, fiance was dying of cancer, and she let us stay there and help her take care of him. But as soon as he died, we were gone. And I had the little white shit box car that I drive and one or two pairs of clothes. That's all I had. That's all I had. And now you look at me like I got more than a job. I've got like a career, you know, that I'm going to probably work at for the rest of my life. You know, I've got probably 300 to 400 people I can call on the phone right now and just come over to their house like I am right now and just kick it. You got
joy, you got peace.
But other than all that material possessions, like the house and the cars and the wives and the clothes, I've got stuff like you were just saying, peace and joy. And I've got like all these spiritual values, like anonymity. Like today I realize I'm not better than anybody. You know, I'm not worse than anybody.
But you're not less.
Like the only thing different than me and the person that's out there sticking the needle in their arm is that I've heard the message. I've heard a message of recovery, and I've chosen to do something.
So what's the message? Give us the message. What's the message?
Well, you hear the age-old saying, you know, that any addict can stop using, lose the desire to use,
and find a new way to live. And we want to thank all y'all for